we ready? It's 8 o'clock. Mr. Johnson? Good morning and welcome to another edition of our post-cabinet press briefing. This morning we have a very special guest in the Minister without Portfolio in the Office of the Prime Minister, the Honorable Floyd Green, who made his his sectoral presentation yesterday, where he spoke significantly about achievements we've made within the National Identification System, JISF, CHASE, and other government initiatives. I would like to invite Minister Green to the podium, but before that I would also like to welcome members of the media as well as those of you listening and viewing online to this post-cabinet press briefing. Minister Green.
Thank you very much, Minister Morgan, and let me say special good morning to the members of the media who've joined us here and all of those who are watching online. So yes, yesterday I did have the opportunity to share in our annual sectoral debates some of the work of the Office of the Prime Minister. And I thought it was very, very important for us to recap some of the agencies, ministries, units, divisions under the Office of the Prime Minister, some of the work that we've done over the past year, and also speak about some of the work that we seek to do in this coming financial year. And the theme of the presentation was A Better Life for All, because I think it's very important that we put in the context why people are doing the various initiatives across the various entities. So I did speak about JISF and some of the work of the Jamaica Social Investment Fund. And the Jamaica Social Investment Fund has for years been dedicated at looking at projects that really seeks to better the lives of Jamaicans. We spoke about the $1.2 billion project at the downtown waterfront, which is a coastal reverment project, which is really to reduce the vulnerability of downtown and ensure that we frame our downtown shoreline in such a manner that it really brings out the best that downtown Kingston has to offer. That project will benefit over 600,000 Jamaicans. You know, it may have missed us that over the past year, JISF worked with the Ministry of Local Government in building 2 brand new fire stations in Yallas and in Port Maria. If you speak to residents in those areas, they'll tell you that for years they have spoken about the state of the fire service in these parishes and the need to have new fire stations. And as such, JISF spent $371 million working on those 2 new fire stations, which are now up and fully functional. One of the areas that has always troubled our country is how we treat, especially in rural Jamaica, with children with special needs, and the reality that we do not have enough public facilities to treat with our students with special needs. We're trying to fix that, and JISF is working with the Ministry of Education to address our students with special needs. They would have spent $87 million to do a fully new block at the Albion Primary School in central Manchester, and that will benefit not only students from central Manchester, but from the surrounding parishes. We may know that JISF works with our farmers significantly. We do have a program called Ready, the Rural Economic Development Initiative, and over the past year we would have helped 1,900 farmers in the Duff House New Forest area. We would have looked at the water that they get at irrigation, how can we make that more efficient, and we would have done that by bringing in a new solar system to take care of the providing the energy needs for that pump in the Plumwood pumping station. JISF also worked on cold storage and also worked with youth farmers. Very important, the Ready 2 initiative is now open, and I'm saying to persons watching that you can go on the JISF website and apply. Community groups can get up to 250,000 United States dollars, and those projects have to be agriculture related or tourism related. So we'd want to encourage everybody, JISF.org for that project. Another entity that I spoke about, which is under the Office of the Prime Minister, which is doing, again, tremendous work, is the CHASE Fund. And CHASE operates in three main areas: early childhood education, health, and arts and culture. And last year, we did build 3 new infant schools, 2 in St. Elizabeth, 1 in Westmoreland. That would have been at Santa Cruz, Leeds, and also Savlamar in Westmoreland. One of the exciting initiatives in relation to early childhood education is that we are introducing technological aids in our early childhood institutions, and not just computers, not just printers, but we've started to introduce interactive display boards. So we're replacing the whiteboards and bringing technology at the earliest level of our child's interaction with the education system. And we're targeting 170 early childhood institutions to get this done, which will benefit over 2,500 infants. Of course, we continue to award scholarships for our early childhood practitioners, undergraduate and postgraduate, and we did 276 scholarships last year for early childhood education and 83 scholarships for our arts and culture. Additionally, this year, on the arts and culture, the Prime Minister has mandated that Chase should start the construction of the Morant Bay Museum. We're really looking forward to that. Again, we think the story of Paul Bogle needs to consistently be told, and the story of St. Thomas and Morant Bay and how that shaped the history of Jamaica, and Chase is dealing with that. Another thing that Chase is looking to advance this year is a regional nephrology center of excellence at the St. Anne's Bay Hospital, and we're looking to start the design work around that. Last year, Chase would have done dialysis machines at the Kingston Public Hospital and at the Spanish Town Hospital. Kidney failure and kidney challenges, it's a big issue for our population, so it's one of the areas that Chase has made into a priority. Clearly, I'm excited about the work of the RGD. It's one of the agencies that I get to work most directly with, and you know, we have aligned in mission to try and make things much more easier for people using the technology. You know, not only did we introduce online booking of weddings last year, online burial forms that people can get in electronic form, online adoption certificates, but we went a little bit further, and people know they can search and pay for authenticated copies of wills online, and you can do an online tracking program, which is very, very exciting, because normally when you do an application to the RGD, you would have to call or you would have to visit the RGD to see what is happening with your application. Now you can just go online and see where it is in the process, and people are using the service. Since we introduced the service in December, we had over 17,000 Jamaicans who've utilized the service, and our online services, we had 43,000 Jamaicans who used the online services last year, and now you can pay and commence a number of projects, a number of our processes online. But one of the big announcements is that we are reintroducing our delivery service this year. So, you know, I went through the RGD process last year on my own, you know, applied for a certificate and went through the process. It took us 3 minutes to actually submit the application, but there was a challenge having to go to the RGD to collect the certificate. So we're reintroducing delivery so people can pay and have their certificates delivered directly to their door. We're working on customer service significantly. I do hear and listen when people complain about issues in relation to call wait time. So we're going to be introducing a new calls management system. We have introduced queue management systems at 5 additional branches this year that has cut wait time by 21%. And we're excited about a self-service kiosk that we'll be introducing in all our branches. So when you go into the branch, you do not have to directly interact with the customer service rep. You can go and help yourself. And we want to do these self-service kiosks not just at the RGD branches, but also at other government entities. So you wouldn't necessarily have to come to RGD to do business related to the RGD. You may not know, but now all our 10 branches have Wi-Fi in their customer service areas. Again, we think this is moving with the times. People can wait in a much more comfortable fashion. Plus, they can do a lot of the activities when they visit our offices without going to a customer service rep. One of the big things for us this year that we'll be working on, we have listened in relation to trying to ensure that our society is more inclusive and that our members of our society that have particular challenges, such as our visually impaired community or those who are blind, have said we need to develop ways that they are included in everything we do. So this year we're working to start producing birth certificates in Braille, and this is specifically for our visually impaired or blind community, and this would be a pioneering work. It will be the first of its kind in the English-speaking Caribbean. Again, we will be introducing this year that the persons who are able to get their first birth certificate free, that they do not have to go into the RGD to apply. It used to be that, yes, you get it free, but you had to go to apply. Now you can apply online. This will benefit over 30,000 mothers. One of the things that we spoke of yesterday is our Operation Birthright. We would have launched that last year, and this is our program for people who do not have birth certificates, who are working minimum wage or below, to get a birth certificate free of cost. We have seen over 2,000 applications over the last year, and we also partnered with the Department of Corrections to work with our inmates to help them get their birth certificates. We've issued now over 100 birth certificates to inmates large at the St. Catherine Correctional Institution. We're looking to expand that this year and to partner with all our correctional institutions. We have issued 274 birth certificates, which is a 96% turnaround rate for persons who are already registered in the system. And I'll just take a little time to explain to you. So what we do find, you have some people who do not have a birth certificate, but some notification of their birth was made, right? So they did start the process, or their parents did start the process, but did not complete the process. Now you have other Jamaicans who do not have any notification, any sort of registration, preliminary entry number of birth. Those require the RGD team to really do research work to ensure that the information that they have provided is correct. So it normally means accessing school records, going into the community, speaking to people in the community. So what we've been able to do, 96% of the people who already have some notation of birth, we've been able to print those birth certificates already, which is about 10% of the applicants. The other 90% now, we've started the research work process. However, what we recognize, we have to ramp up our human resource capacity. So we've employed 14 additional people. They work solely on Operation Birthright, and we do expect over the next 2 months to be able to clear a lot of the persons who've already applied. And I want to use this opportunity to say to people, please, apply for Operation Birthright. If you do not have a birth certificate, we're willing to help you to work through that and to get a birth certificate. Additionally, under our National Identification System project, we're doing some really, really good work. And not just in relation to our national ID, but in relation to the RGD and strengthening the RGD. You may remember that last year we spoke about digitization project. What that is going to do is going to digitize all the records at the RGD from 1930 to now. What happens at the RGD now is that if you were born before the 2000s, largely the process still has a manual component. So if you go and you want a copy of your birth certificate, they can put in an entry number, but they will still have to go into a vault and take out actually that physical copy to make a copy of that. What we're doing now in this digitization process is that all of that will be online, and they could automatically pull it up and print it and give it to you. It will save loads of time. So that process is ongoing. For JISTV Caribbean has that contract. They have already built out the digitization center. They've employed 29 Hope graduates, and they will be trained and certified in digitization, and we're seeking to employ an additional 11 over the next 2 months. Quickly, the last 2-3 areas. NIDS, where we are, having launched our technical pilot on the 30th of December, we spent the next 3 months working on a lot of behind-the-scenes things, a lot of our security testing, penetration testing to ensure that it is the most secure process that we have in our country. We worked on our inline enrollment, queue management, identity management, pre-enrollment. We're now able to personalize your national identification cards with a digital certificate, with our digital signature. So not only will you have your signature, once you have your national identification card, you will have a digital signature so you can authenticate documents and processes. One of the things that we have been very bullish about is how can we ensure that NIDS is useful, that our national ID adds value to the Jamaican population. As such, we have looked at some of the big challenges that we've had in the public sector and in the private sector, and we're trying to fix that using the national ID because of the electronic identification system. So we've been working with our banks. We signed an MOU with 10 deposit-taking institutions, and we've been saying with them, how can you make your processes easier using the national ID? So I was very happy yesterday to highlight that at least National Commercial Bank, and I know other banks are on this trajectory, but the National Commercial Bank has already gotten approval from the Bank of Jamaica to use the National Identification and Registration Authority and the National ID to integrate it in 3 use cases, which includes face-to-face deposit account onboarding, online deposit account onboarding, with biometric authentication and KYC remediation. What does that mean in a real sense? What we're moving towards is what happens in other jurisdictions, where without having to go into a bank, you can open a bank account. Now, one of the big challenges for that in Jamaica was identity. Because we never had a national identity database, what we ended up using is multiple identifiers to prove that you are who you say you are. Now with the national ID that will capture your photograph, your fingerprint, and will have your digital signature, you can authenticate yourself online. What NCB is moving to do is they've gotten approval from the BOJ to, once we get our national ID up and running, to open online bank accounts. So can you just imagine how that will really liberate our financial sector and ensure that we have greater accessibility? We're going to be rolling out 19 additional enrollment sites. We expect to go to tender this month, and we're using the post office. It will be across all parishes because we want to ensure that people who want to sign up for the national ID can access national ID. 2 last areas, our National Partnership Council. I do hope we will see a lot more being written and said about our National Partnership Council. You know, it's one of the areas that we get to treat with some of the most challenging problems that Jamaica has in an inclusive way. Our National Partnership Council has the opposition, it has the private sector, the church, women, youth, civil society, all around the table. And we did change the structure, so we now have quarterly meetings with the Prime Minister. It's chaired by the Prime Minister, and we do have monthly coordinating committee meetings. And what happens there is some of the big issues. So, for example, when we had the pollution incident in the Rio Cobre, that came to the National Partnership Council. Our civil society groups asked that the minister come and report to them what was happening and how would the government take steps to ensure that, for example, the fisher folk who were injured in terms of loss of business, that they would get compensation. And we had very frank, robust discussions with Minister Matissa Mood at the time. And as we all know now, everything that was advocated for in that meeting came to fruition, and the fisher folks got their compensation and the bond was used, things of that nature. So the National Partnership Council really does play a pivotal role in treating with some of these challenging issues. I'll give you one more example. We've had a lot of conversation about the development of Kingston and St. Andrew, and a number of groups have complained about the nature of the development and their inability to access information about people who are getting building permits and when their permits are turned down and how they can object and things of that nature. So we had a meeting of the Partnership Council. We had the KSAC, we had NEPA, we had the NWA, and again, all the groups were able to ask their questions. And the Prime Minister did give some directives. And already coming out of that meeting, the KSAC has now revamped their website so that wherever you are in Kingston and St. Andrew, you can just type in your community name and you can see who has applied for developmental permission, what they plan to build, what stage of the permission process they are, or if they've been turned down. And you can also use that channel to communicate if you have issues. And again, this is how we move from conversation to action. The final thing is that we are in the UN Global Road Safety Week. We celebrate this week under the theme Rethink Mobility. One of the areas that the Prime Minister has asked me to focus on is road safety under the auspices of the National Road Safety Council. And as such, clearly we want to re-emphasize the safe systems approach to road safety, and to say to all of us, it will require an all-hands-on-deck approach. We are seeing a positive trend, but it is much too early to celebrate. So we have seen a 17% decline in deaths on our nation's roads this year. That is up until Monday of this week, May 15th. We were at 155 deaths, and last year this time we would have been at 172 deaths. So we are happy that we're seeing a decline, but 155 is still too much. And as such, we have to redouble our efforts. Some of the things that we'll be doing this year, we have gotten some resources from the UN Road Safety Fund to develop a 3-year project called A Safe Systems Approach to Road Safety. And what we will be doing under that project is a multi-sectoral approach. So one, we will be financing some observational studies to look and capture the attitudes of our pedestrians and our drivers so that we can craft an effective road safety plan to treat with that. We will be purchasing additional equipment for enforcement. So we will be purchasing additional breathalyzers. We have, I think, $70,000 out of that 400,000 towards that. We will be purchasing additional speed enforcement equipment. We have $50,000 towards that. We will be training our police officers so that they can better capture information when they go to crash sites. And we have about $80,000 towards that. And we will be putting in an electronic injury monitoring surveillance with our health systems. You know, we speak a lot about death on our roads, but the costs for injury to our hospital system is actually much, much more. The last estimate we had in 2017 put it at about $3.2 billion that the country faces from injury from motor vehicle crashes. We want to see how we can effectively monitor that so that we can have a really good overarching cost so that we can ramp up the money we put into these life-saving initiatives from the Road Safety Council. So I want to use the UN Road Safety Week to encourage everybody to please be safe on the road. The RTA that was brought in is supposed to help us change behaviors. It is not a tool of oppression. We are conducting a review, and we have already gotten some good suggestions, and the next review committee meeting will be this month, at which time we'll start putting together our recommendations for Cabinet. So I thank everybody who was able to watch and who have commented on the sectoral, and I thank Minister Morgan for giving us this opportunity to share at this post-Cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Green. Really appreciate the very comprehensive review of your presentation yesterday. We do have members of the media here, and we are now opening the floor so that they can ask their questions. Do we have the first question?
Good morning, Arthur Hall from the Jamaica Observer. Minister Green,
morning, Arthur.
Minister Green, as you speak about the review of the RTA, the tax motorists are upset that they're starting to see their driver's license suspended, and the review is not yet done. Can you tell us when do you expect to do the review and what areas specifically are you looking at?
Okay. Thank you, Arthur. So the Road Traffic Act is in force. A number of segments of the act is in force. The Minister of Transport did indicate that it would be a phased implementation, and he has indicated some of the things that would be phased in. But the things that have not been phased in are in force. So the point system in relation to the Road Traffic Act is in force. I think people should be aware that the road traffic system that we operate has a sort of, there's a sort of dual approach. Not only does it penalize offending, it tries to guard against reoffending, right? So if you create an offense against the Road Traffic Act, yes, you'll get a ticket and you will pay the penalty. But each offense comes with a series of points to guard against reoffending. And once you reach a certain threshold of points, then your license is liable to be suspended. One of the changes that the Road Traffic Act made is that the ITA now has the authority to do those suspensions. In relation to the review of the act, so what we have done, we've opened it up in relation to people to give suggestions for various areas that they think is in need of review. And we have been getting suggestions. I'll tell you a couple of them. People have already raised, for example, that the new provisions for persons who are 70 and over, right, they believe that the threshold of 70 is too low and that we should raise the threshold in relation to age before putting in more stringent provisions. The new RTA indicates that if you're 70 and over, then your driver's license would be for 3 years instead of the 5 years. So people have said that needs to be raised in terms of age. We've gotten comments in relation to whether we should be looking at a regime for bike taxis. As you know, in parts of our country, bike taxis do operate and they're not mentioned in the RTA. So we have gotten a suggestion in relation to that. We've gotten complaints in relation to the level of tint that the Act prescribes for a motor vehicle, and that level of tint is too low. It's something, again, that we will look at. Motorcycles, we've gotten complaints that there's a requirement for the license plate to be at the front of the motorcycle, and a lot of the motorcycles do not come with a provision for the license plate to be placed at the front. So people have said that needs to be removed. And one of the ones that keeps coming up is for people to be able to utilize an electronic copy of their driver's license instead of having to have the physical copy. So we have pulled together a committee that includes our public transport operators, and we have asked them to directly submit any concerns that they have. We have the private sector organization represented and members of police and road safety. As I said, we already had our first meeting. We will have our next meeting before the end of May, at which time we will go through each suggestion and we will make recommendations to Cabinet. I want to be in a position to make those recommendations come June, right? And then Cabinet will determine whether any amendments will come.
Thank you, Minister Green. Do we have another question?
So Shauna Small from the Jamaica Gleaner. I have a question for Minister Morgan. Well, two questions, actually. Minister, how does the government justify the over 20% increase in salaries for the political directorate? And 20%? Yes. And is the government concerned that this level of increase will affect the morale of other public sector workers?
Thank you very much. So the first thing we have to accept and agree on is that the public sector transformation project that we have completed, or we're almost complete with, is probably one of the most significant adjustments in the position of public sector workers that has ever been done in Jamaica. If you listen to the Minister of Finance yesterday, he would have outlined a significant amount of increases, many of which are much higher than what was announced for government and opposition members and MPs. The our belief is we're not celebrating an increase. The increase comes as part of a public sector transformation process. The question that we have to also ask ourselves is, and I'm going to go into more detail in this question because I think it's a very important question that we all should contemplate. Where should, on the scale, members of parliament be? So the structure that was outlined many decades ago said that ministers of cabinet should be $53 above permanent secretaries. Permanent secretaries got a significant increase, which reached a particular level. We did not interfere with the structure that was operating for the last 20-odd years. So it's not a case where the government got up and said, okay, we're going to just give the ministers a massive increase. It is an increase that is predicated on the formula that has been accepted and used for the last 20-odd years in government. So if permanent secretaries are at X, are we saying then that a minister should be paid below the level of the permanent secretary? Because that is the implication in many cases. So I'm not celebrating an increase. I mean, I never campaigned for an increase. But the transformation process is a formula that we don't know. Parliamentarian went into a negotiation to ask for an increase. The increase was determined by a formula. Now, the question that we need to ask ourselves is, if it is that you don't believe that parliamentarians and cabinet ministers should be almost on par with permanent secretaries, where the permanent secretary is in charge of the execution of government policy and the minister is almost a little bit above, almost parallel, is in charge of determining policy, should the policy maker be paid below the person who is executing the policy? Because that is the question that I think is missing from the conversation. So I do appreciate persons in the public raising significant questions, and those questions are appropriate. But I think where we need to move from is asking ourselves the question, if not this, then where should you put them? Should we, and I'm going to go even deeper into the conversation. So if you look at the salary scales for, let's start with doctors. So there is this saying that it's 200% above and nobody else has received such an increase. HPC MO3, the existing salary for that medical doctor is $3 million. As of effective April 1, 2023, at the beginning of the scale, it goes to $8 million. What percentage increase is that? 3 to 8. That's almost 200, right? You look at HPC MO2, $2.6 million at the bottom of the scale. Effective April 1, 2023, it moves to $7 million. You have HPC MO1. At the bottom of the scale now, the person is earning $2.2 million. Effective April 1, that person is earning $6.2 million. That sounds like what, 200% again, right? And let me even go further for you, because we've been along this road. Every government has had the difficult challenge as it relates to how do you compensate persons in the political directorate. No government has been brave enough to carry through the entire public sector transformation process properly. In the 2007, 8, 9, we moved teachers to market, but we never moved anybody else. So the nurses didn't benefit, the doctors didn't benefit, what you call them, I worked with them in the Ministry of Education, the persons who go into communities, the social workers didn't benefit. So you had social workers who were earning $800,000 a year. And then on the flip side, we complain that we don't have enough social workers because nobody wants the job. This government has moved social workers to a base of about $3 to $4 million. That's more than 200%. So it's not just politicians. I mean, it's very easy for us to jump on the politicians, and rightly so. They are representatives of the people. They deserve criticism in many cases. But one of the things we have to do, I think, as a country, is that we have to ask ourselves, where is it that we want to go? Let me move on a little bit further. Let's go to nurses. I'm trying to bring it up here. Give me a second. Let's not go to nurses yet. It's not coming up. Let's go to teachers, which is persons are saying that the government has done bad by teachers. And it's important that we listen, because when I woke up this morning and I was reading social media, somebody said that teachers only got a 20% increase. Let me read something for you. Principal, Class A, tertiary level. Currently, that person would be getting $4,300,000. That person, as of April 1, 2022, began getting $9.6 million. That's over a 100% increase. As of April 1, 2023, and I'm using the bottom of the scale, I'm not even going to the top of the scale, I'm starting at the baseline. 2023, that person is getting $10.3 million. That's over a 150% increase, I believe. Principal Class B, $3.7 million currently. As of April 1, 2022, that person moved from $3.7 million to $9.6 million. That's almost a 200% increase. And in 2024, that person is going to move to $11.1 million. So 3.7 to, at the end of the process, $11 million. Let's look at senior teacher. The current payment for a senior lecturer at a tertiary level is $2.468 million. Effective April 1, 2022, that person moves to 4.2, almost a 100% increase. As of April 1, 2023, that person moves to $4.5 million. And by 2024, that person would be $4.8 million. Now, there's a reason why and I'm sure persons are going to say you're only focusing on principals. Let us go to the primary level. Let's go down to the general trained graduate. Currently, a trained graduate earns $1.3 million. With effect from April 1, 2022, that salary moves from $1.3 million to $2.5 million. That's over a 100% increase. But we listen to the radio and we hear we only gave teachers 20%. Is my math correct? Because one of the things that we have a responsibility to do, and I have a responsibility as a Minister of Information, is I have to, anything I say in this meeting, in this room, can be vetted and assessed by the journalists here. So I do not have the luxury of being dishonest in anything I say. And while the truth might be uncomfortable to some persons who may be listening because they want to say that we only gave 20%. When I'm reading here, numerous cases at all levels of government where people got 100% increase, 200% increase, some even got 250% increase. So let me continue, because I'm spending the time because I think it is important. Graduate pre-trained, existing $1,043,000. Effective April 1, 2022, $1.9 million. That's over 80% increase, I think. Effect from April 1, 2023, $2.084 million. That's 100% increase. Let us move on to trained teacher diploma. Existing, April 1, 2022. Existing actually is $1,043,000, which is $1,043,000. With effect from April 1, 2022, that jumped to $1.984 million. With effect from April 1, 2023, it jumped to $2.084 million. With effect from April 1, 2024, it will jump to $2.45 million. So moving from $1,043,000 to at the end of the process to $2.245 million. That's over 100% increase. Pre-trained teacher. You know how much a pre-trained teacher was earning? $699,000. With effect from April 1, 2022, a pre-trained teacher is earning $1.272 million. 2/6 is 12. So that would make it a 100% increase, right, Mr. Hall? So, and I'm going to, I wish I want to go on and on and on and on, because I think we have a lot of time this morning to go into this issue. Let us go to the legal officers in government. Because the challenge is, nobody wants to talk about how much they're earning. Nobody wants to. But it's very important that the public knows, because this is tax dollars. People need to know how much the politician is earning. They need to know how much the minister is earning. They need to know how much the judge is earning. They need to know how much the clerk, the gardener, who was earning 17,000, well, it was less than that. They were earning almost minimum wage before this transformation. Is now almost earning double what they were earning before. The office attendant salary has doubled. But let me go back to the list. Legal officer, these are the people who work in the various government agencies and ministries, who look at the documents, write the briefs, give advice as to what is happening, to assess laws, to assist ministries in being legally sound. Legal officer 6, the current salary, and when I say current, I mean the one before the activation of the salary adjustment, $4.9 million. With effect from April 1, 2022, that moved from 4.9 to $8.9 million. That's a 100% increase. By April 1, 2024, it will move to $11.4 million. So they're moving from $4.9 million to $11.4 million. Let's go to the lowest legal officer in government. Legal officer 1, existing, $1.976 million. With effect from April 1, 2022, their salary moved to $3.332 million. As at April 1, 2023, it moved to $3.7 million. As at April 1, 2024, it moves to $4.2 million. And I am not giving you this information to diminish the concerns of the public. And I want to make it very clear. The public has valid concerns about accountability. The public has valid concerns about corruption and the work that MPs are doing. And these are valid concerns. But they are separate arguments. The MPs never went and negotiated an increase. Their increase was predicated on a pre-existing formula that was almost automatic. So if you're going to lift permanent secretaries, then the logical implication is that by lifting permanent secretaries, the minister is going to automatically be lifted as well. So the question that I think we need to ask ourselves again, and I'm sorry to hijack your question, is what should we pay MPs and government people? Should they be paid below the permanent secretary? Should they be on par with the permanent secretary? Because essentially that is what the debate is about. And that's a question that we as a country will have to ask. Mr. Hall?
Yeah, Minister, just two quick things. The opposition says that it's indefensible, morally indefensible to do the increases for members of the political directorate at this time when you still have teachers who are not collecting their full level of compensation based on the review. Also, the argument that...
Can I answer your first question?
Sure.
But before I answer it, though, which one of the opposition are you referring to? Because I was in Parliament yesterday and the opposition spokesperson on finance said that he's fine with the increases. And then today, another opposition from the same party said that they're not fine with it. So I'm trying to understand which one. So the opposition spokesperson on finance.
I'm speaking to the release that the People's National Party.
But you said opposition first, Mr. Hall.
Yes.
You never said PNP. So there is an opposition and a PNP.
You know, I'm not good way to withdraw it. I'm asking to respond to the release from the People's National Party this morning, sir.
It's the same argument that we have to ask. We know that a large number of opposition MPs lobbied the Ministry of Finance for an increase. We know that as a fact. So when the press release said that they never had any discussions, that is actually not really true. And there's a reason why Julian Robinson said what he said yesterday. Because there was significant feelings among the opposition benches that they needed an increase, and there was anticipation as to what the increase is and when the increase would come into play. So the issue with the opposition deciding which is their real position is something that they're going to have to make a decision on. I cannot comment on that from this platform. What I will say, though, Arthur, is that we as members of Parliament, and I'm not speaking as Minister of Information, now that this has happened, have an almost mandatory obligation to demonstrate to the people of Jamaica that this increase that has been given to us means something for them. It means, and I want you to allow me, Arthur. I don't know if your hand is getting tired. I'm going to answer the second question. It means that MPs have to, if they were doing 100% before, they now have to go to 150%. It means that ministers have to step up their game if they weren't stepping it up. And Prime Minister had a conversation with us because I think he recognizes as well the position that we have been placed, not by our own actions, but by the public sector transformation process has essentially placed us in this position where I'm here this morning trying to justify to you something that none of us really even knew. I never knew this was going to happen and the level at which it was. I'm sure most of us didn't even know that how this would manifest itself. Prime Minister was very clear to us yesterday that the dynamics of our engagement as ministers and MPs has changed. The Minister of Finance yesterday spoke about that this is not an increase for the present, it's an increase for the future. Lee Kuan Yew, when he was running Singapore, said that he's going to pay his government people well so that they have zero excuse to either not do their jobs or to be corrupt. And I think we as government, opposition, executive, the excuse of not being paid well is off the table. What needs to happen now, and the Prime Minister was very clear about it, is that MPs and ministers, and I think on both sides of the aisle, now have an ultimate responsibility to demonstrate to the people of Jamaica, even more than they were doing before, that we're working for them.
Minister.
Second question.
Last week when we were here, you announced the task force to look at the problems in some teachers' salary since the review. The opposition says it's an indecent ease to give the parliamentarians an increase now. Is this indecent ease to pave the way for the Prime Minister to reshuffle his cabinet?
The reshuffling of the cabinet is the prerogative of the Prime Minister, so I really have no knowledge of what the Prime Minister plans to do as it relates to that. As it relates to the teachers, I mean, I speak to my teachers in my constituency. A lot of them are happy with the increases that they have got. A lot of them have gotten some significant increases. But there's still a few. So we have essentially adjusted 90-odd%, almost 99% of the public sector through this process at varying levels, stretching from 300% increase to 20, 30, 40% increase. Most of this process has happened almost seamlessly. We have not had issues with the adjustments for the police, the nurses and the doctors. We have not had issues. But we have had some issues with the education system and the whole system of payment. And I think I want to allow me to go a little bit deeper because I was there and I think Floyd was there as well. A big part of the reason why we need to implement My HR Plus in the Ministry of Education is because of this type of problem. So you don't have bursa-paid nurses or bursa-paid police versus centrally paid nurses and centrally paid police. So there's a kind of dual system in the education sector where one set of schools are bursa-paid, the other set of schools are central government paid, which causes significant challenges within the system in terms of reconciliation and so on. There's also an issue as it relates to the relationship between the regions and central government and the Ministry of Finance, and having so many different steps that you have to complete to pay a teacher raises issues. And I think part of the reason why Minister Williams has set up this task force is recognizing that though there may not be many teachers or a majority of teachers who are facing this salary issue, even if one teacher does not feel comfortable or does not understand the fairness of their adjustment, it is a cause for concern. And in talking to the minister, in talking to the Minister of Finance as well, they have told me of their strong commitment to ensure that these issues are resolved very quickly. And it's very easy for us, Arthur, to focus on anomalies within the transformation, but remember that this process included over almost 200,000 people, contract workers in some cases, central government workers in other cases, over 22,000 teachers, over 11,000 police officers. So you are going to have some challenges, and the obligation of the government is to work with the teachers, work with the JTA, work with the regions, work with the principals to try and resolve these challenges. Do we have another question? All right. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for being here this morning. And it is a very important day, I believe. And I ask that you remain safe and have a prosperous rest of the day. Thanks also to members of the team from the Office of the Prime Minister, JIS, and those who are listening and watching online. Stay tuned next week, Wednesday, 8 o'clock, for another post-cabinet press briefing. Thank you very much.